think we are live.
We are. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Be great to hear where everyone's dialing in from. I'm currently in the miserable Midlands. It is absolutely horrendous. I don't know if it's like that down in London, Mike.
Well, it was raining here a second ago, but the sun has now just broken through, hence the sort of dramatic lighting on this side of my face today. But yeah, so I'm down in London. Alex, where are you?
Also in London, North London. And yes, sun is sort of creeping out from the clouds now, hopefully for a nice afternoon.
Amazing. For those of you joining us, please do use the chat, introduce yourselves, say hi, let us know where you're dialing in from. Both geographically, but also which company you're here representing. It'd be great to hear who we've got in the room. Shall we do some introductions, Tom?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Would you like to start?
Yeah, well, hi, everyone. My name is Mike. I am the Director of Mentoring and Engagement here at Guider. I've been with Guider for about 2.5 years now and lead on lots of our customer implementations, a bit of thought leadership and expertise in all things mentoring. Sometimes I just describe myself, I'm the kind of resident mentoring nerd at Guider, and that's what I like to bring to the table.
I think we use the word guru, don't we, Mike? Rather than
guru, yeah, guru is probably better than nerd. You're right, Tom. Yeah, let's go with that. That's
good stuff. Well, yeah, I'll introduce myself as well. My tenure is a lot shorter than Mike's. I joined Guider around about 7 weeks ago. So up until 7 weeks ago, I was working for Thrive. And then post acquisition of Guider, I've moved into a new role as Chief Sales Officer. So looking after things from a new business commercial perspective, all things sales. But yeah, that's me. Let Alex introduce herself.
Fab. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Alex. I'm the Foundation Manager at the Early Careers Foundation. We're a social mobility charity dedicated to supporting 16 to 18-year-olds from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to access great careers guidance and careers support. I have been working at the foundation now for about 3.5 years, and we've been working with Guider to host our mentoring program, which is kind of a flagship program for about 2 years now. Well, we're kind of entering our 3rd year this month in September, which is very exciting. That's me.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Really good to have you with us. Very grateful for you to give up some time this afternoon to come and talk about some of your experiences using Guider and the great work you guys do at the Early Careers Foundation with your mentoring programs. Got a few people in the chat saying hi. Ian, Namisha, Judith, Rebecca, Sati, Kate, all of these people coming up. Great to have you with us. Yeah, really excited to dig into our topic today, which is all about mentoring, but not as you know it. How can we take this concept of mentoring, which is a big word, often misused, lots of people bring their own meaning to it, and really use it to power incredible employee engagement and fold it into the rest of your learning and development stack in the organizations that you work in. Tom, why don't you take us through what we're going to cover today?
Thanks, Mike. Yes, so quite light. We're going to keep this quite informal. There are a few slides that we'll talk you through just to kind of set the scene. But as the slide suggests, we're going to be looking at the case for mentoring. Hopefully, every single person on this this webinar doesn't need convincing, but we'll be diving into that a little bit. We'll be looking at where there are opportunities and applications and where mentoring can be used. But again, I think the opportunities are pretty endless as well. So again, quite an exciting piece to look at. And then finally, how does Guider solve those problems? And then we'll be having a little fireside chat with Alex just to talk about their experience of Guider and how that's helping them scale mentoring as part of their initiatives as well.
Amazing. Lots of stuff to cover off today. We're going to start by talking a bit about the case for mentoring. I've spoken over the last 2.5 years to hundreds and hundreds of organizations who are at different levels of mentoring maturity. That's a term that Tom coined a couple of moments into his time with Guider that I've adopted and stolen and really like. So organizations who have got very formalized top-down mentoring programs, and other organizations who are doing things very informally where it just kind of happens and nobody owns it. And the good news is, across all of those conversations, hundreds and hundreds of them, No one has ever said to me, Mike, what are you doing? Mentoring's rubbish. Not once has that ever been said to me. Everybody understands its power. Everybody understands its impact. Nevertheless, I think it's worth thinking about and dialing into why it has such a huge impact. We saw a massive change here at Guider in the employer-employee relationship when COVID hit. The world of work changed drastically. Those face-to-face connections became harder to achieve. And that was a period when employers started to think a lot more seriously about how to connect people within the organization for all sorts of reasons, one of which is learning and development. We've seen so many studies, a really big one by Deloitte a few years ago, talking to Gen Z employees and new generation employees joining the workplace. And the biggest predominant thing they're asking for is mentorship and guidance from senior leaders, from other members of the team. And I think that's not that surprising. And I think it's probably, Alex, why the ECF has focused so much on mentorship as part of its remit and part of its package, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our programs are all about supporting young people to access careers guidance, and what better way to do it than sort of from people that have experience and wisdom to share and want to do that through the kind of medium of mentoring. And for us in particular, when we're engaging young people, mentoring is great because it's less of that kind of formal relationship that you might have with a teacher or a boss. It's a slightly unique relationship that allows our students to gain professional skills and kind of learn that, but in a sort of friendly, supportive mentoring environment as opposed to a super formal one.
Yeah, that's unsurprising, right? And I think it's having really great impact wherever we see it kind of employed. Tom, do you want to talk through some of these results?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, hopefully none of this will be a surprise. I think everybody can understand and see the value of mentoring solutions. I think when we look specifically at Guider, I won't talk through these line by line, but I think it really stands out that people are so receptive to those mentoring relationships, that it's desired, but then also impactful, right? It's not just something that people are asking for without really any sort of tangible benefits. We are seeing some real sort of driven impact off the back of what we're doing. One of the other points I was just going to touch on, Mike, just from the previous slide was I think I've had something like 70 calls with customers over the last 6 weeks, including a 1 week holiday, so call it 5. And there's been some really interesting insights and conversations that have come out of that. And one of them, I spoke to an organization who mentioned that in the next 5 years, 30% of their workforce will be retiring. And so there is such a risk or challenge there in terms of that retention of knowledge, and actually how do they capture that? We're in this kind of AI first world at the moment where everybody is thinking about how do AI solutions solve problems, but actually there's still a place for those human interventions to address those challenges as well. So yeah, a really interesting and exciting place to be at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's so true, and lots of organizations are facing that aging worker population. How do you upskill and train a new generation of talent? And we're seeing a really big trend. I saw we've got Vicky and Kate, I think, from the British Retail Consortium, and also we've got Olivia in from Ocado, where we're seeing a really big trend in the retail space and other deskless workers, people who aren't, like I am, bound in this tiny little yellow room to their desk and their office all the time, and using mentoring for deskless workers to connect them to other employees and really drive home some of the other more formalized learning experiences that are being delivered through platforms like Thrive. So I think there's a massive case to be made across the board for the power and impact that mentoring can have. And again, I don't want to talk through, I don't do death by PowerPoint and talk through all these stats, but there's so many different problems in the current kind of world of the employee-employer relationship, in the world of learning and development. Everything from kind of skills siloing right the way through to, as Tom said, that aging population. And although mentoring can be a really great solution to lots of these, it's really hard to scale mentoring effectively in coaching. I mean, Alex, maybe this is something that you guys were doing previously before you used a mentoring platform, but matching people using spreadsheets, trying to organize mentoring programs, that must have taken up a huge amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to actually think about that now, but our matching process was manual, and we wanted to make sure we were kind of tailoring the experience, I suppose, for each pair. You know, making sure that you've got two people working together that are well matched, that are going to both be able to gain something out of the relationship is so important. But doing that manually is just completely impossible to scale. So it's hard to think about that now, but it was a very admin heavy process for us.
Yeah, and that's something we hear all the time. You know, my sort of, I feel so sorry for stakeholders who are doing matching on spreadsheets. It gives me a headache just thinking about it. And I think that scalability piece is really important here. We talked before at Guider about this idea of the learning gap. You've got formal learning and development initiatives, you know, your content, your training, those historically have been highly impactful, very easy to scale, but quite difficult to get like high levels of engagement. This is something that Thrive is extraordinarily good at, and why it's such a great fit for Guider to becoming part of Thrive Group. Then on the other end, you've got this informal learning, things like mentoring, which are really impactful, have very high engagement, but really difficult to scale. So they have a slightly different problem. And in the middle, you've got this gap. Well, bringing together a platform like Thrive and a platform like Guider, we get super high engagement, really, really high impact, and very, very like strong learner outcomes all in one single package. And I think that's something, Tom, I know you're going to talk about in a little while when we talk about Guider and how it works. Mentoring as well, I think, has, I said this, I alluded to this at the beginning, it's a big word that means different things to different people. So for some people, it's a very hierarchical practice where you have a senior, you know, Yoda-like mentor passing down knowledge to more junior employees. For other people, it's a lot less structured, and it's more about just something that sits outside of that normal line manager employee relationship. The good news for that, with such a breadth of definition, is that there are dozens of different use cases where it can be employed. So obviously at the Early Careers Foundation, there's this career development and external mentorship element that you guys are doing such a lot of work on, Alex. But internally, there's also, you know, leadership developments. We have a lot of customers who identify high talent, high potential talent, and put those in a discrete leadership development program to develop those future leaders. Same for graduate programs. A key use case for us is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how do we increase the number of perspectives that different senior leaders are influenced by and are exposed to across the business, right the way through to what Tom was alluding to, succession planning. You know, how do we make sure that there is a strong succession plan in place, and how can we use mentoring to really drive that? The women in leadership use case is one that's very close to our heart at Guider. One of our core customers that we love working with is LVMH, the global luxury conglomerate. They run their LVMH program, excuse my terrible French accent, which is supporting their global initiative to get their leadership at 50%, more than 50% representation of women by the end of this year. And I'm really pleased to report that actually they hit that statistic, they hit that milestone earlier this year. And Guider and the program they run with us is a really big part of them achieving that. So one of the benefits of using a platform like Guider is the customization we can provide and the support we can provide to align mentoring behind a vast number of different use cases. Tom, is there anything that you wanted to add here, or Alex, any perspective on this? That I'm putting you in the hot seat, I know.
I was just going to say, I think the point around the kind of women in leadership initiative, the metric there of having something tangible that we're tying it back to, I think is really important, where it's, you know, taking mentoring from a nice to have to a must have is where we're actually thinking about, like, what is that organizational KPI metric, something tangible where we can go, this is driving something forward for us. I think that's really important when any organization is thinking about setting up and formalizing their mentoring initiatives, is to be thinking about that end goal of the so what. And that's the case with any purchase of any solution, right? Trying to get that signed off by a CFO is difficult enough. They're going to want to know how you're measuring it. But I think having a clear picture of what does success look like is fundamental to ensuring that kind of bottom up sort of longer term success as well.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to. We're going to get in a bit of detail on that, I think, as well. I'll talk a bit about our value realization framework, but it's such a good point, Tom. Like, having somewhere that you're pointing to and a metric that you can actually judge that is an outcome for the business is super important. Alex, there's actually a direct question for you in the chat. I'll read it out. So Ian Summerfield is asking, there you go, put it on the screen. Would you recommend upskilling potential mentors for that role? Or would you say that Guider can assist with this as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. On our program, we provide dedicated training for all of our volunteer mentors, partially because they're working with a vulnerable group of young people. So there's some safeguarding training that's involved from our side. In terms of support with engaging with a young person, we provide quite a lot of support with that prior to volunteers joining our program. But Guider has really comprehensive resources to support with it kind of on an ongoing basis. So often our volunteers want to really focus on building their own leadership skills through mentoring, or really develop their own communication skills through their time as a mentor. And with those kind of specific focuses that they might have for their own, upskilling and professional development journeys, then there's lots of ways that you can utilize the resources on Guider to kind of support with that. So it's not something that our team has to spend their time doing.
Yeah, and it's a really key question, and lots of people ask this idea of like mentoring enablement. How do we make sure that people are prepared for their role as a mentor? Lots of organizations we work with, just like the ECF, they have their own training, and or their own kind of set of materials. We can utilize those and make them accessible through the platform. But as Alex kindly pointed to, we also provide a lot of guidance and support as part of our onboarding packages and support packages generally, on how to get the most out of those relationships and how to be a great mentor. Mentoring is a skill. It is a muscle that you build, not something that you're inherently born with. And we can certainly help with that enablement side.
I think just on that, Mike, as well, I think Alex made another good point around the benefits for mentors and not just mentees. When we think about the positioning of the program itself, and actually why should we be looking to enroll as a mentor within a program, I think oftentimes people see the benefit of mentees and them enrolling, but actually there is real value in those mentors as well, especially when we start to think about scaling these initiatives across an organization, where you're going to end up in a world where you have people that have never been a mentor before, and so they might have never put their hand up and been willing, but actually if we can start to show them the value of what it will bring to them as well, that's a real tool in terms of helping scale that program as well.
Yeah,
absolutely, Tom. Sorry to jump in again, but it's actually something we've really found over the past year. We've just kind of boarded a cohort that have been on our mentoring program over the past sort of 12 months, and 82% of our mentors reported an improvement in their communication skills. I think it's something that oftentimes people shy away from. You want to be, as a mentor, helping somebody else and supporting them, and you kind of want it to be quite altruistic, but it's actually worth remembering it's very much a two-way street, and there's a lot that can be gained from participating as a mentor as well.
Yeah, I love that, Alex. I love that statistic. I'm definitely stealing it. So yeah, I mean, we've given you lots of statistics as well, but there is a lot of evidence, both our own proprietary research that we've done here at Guider, but more broadly across the world of L&D and the world of work, that mentoring is both desired by employees, but also highly impactful when it is delivered as part of a broader learning and development strategy. I want to talk a little bit about Guider and some of the key areas that it supports organizations in establishing, scaling, and then monitoring and evaluating and optimizing mentoring, coaching, buddying, peer learning programs across the board. Tom, over to you for a bit.
Perfect. Yeah, so this has been a really interesting learning curve, I think, for me over the last sort of 6 or so weeks and all of those conversations. And one of the things that I've really tried to personally identify is, like, what are the 3 problems that Guider as a solution solves for organizations? Like, at its fundamentals, how do we distill that into real basic sort of problem statements? And firstly, as we've touched on, is that kind of the matching piece. So as we've alluded to, if you're currently doing that in a very manual way, that is burdensome, challenging, and unsustainable. And so a solution like Guider really elevates that offering in terms of helping you scale that matching, helping you identify other people within the organization that are wanting to be mentors and mentees, and pairing them in a very efficient and understood and thoughtful way. And I think that's a critical part. We'll probably talk about this in terms of all of the different data points and insights and perspectives that we can get that are going to inform that matching. Again, some of the conversations I've had with L&D teams is they have a generally good overview of people within the organization and who they think might be a good match, but they're probably not in the detail of knowing necessarily whether or not they would be. And so we can start to use that data to really inform that. The next part is, again, the kind of so what. You've put people into these relationships and you've matched them, but we could be in a world where, as we've touched on, that mentors have never mentored before and mentees have never been mentored before as well. So again, how do both parties get the most out of those conversations? Well, one, providing them with the tools and skill sets in order to have those effective conversations and really maximize the output of what they're doing. And then finally, again, data is always the story, right? It's like, how do we start to tie that back to something that is tangible, whether that be at a very basic level, looking at goal attainment or skill development, right through to something much bigger picture, retention, for example. So I think this is where it gets quite exciting, is where we're bringing all of those three elements together into a solution that enables L&D teams to get the most out of those mentoring initiatives that they're running as well. Yeah,
I think that these are all areas that we see come up again and again and again. And to zoom in on that matching piece that Tom just spoke about, one of the challenges in traditional mentoring is that often it's quite exclusive, in that it depends on who you know, and it depends on who has the confidence to go and ask within the organization, can I have you as my mentor? And that leads to really poor learner outcomes. And increasing access to mentorship is a really key part of why customers come and use Guider. So one of the questions I always ask people when they're considering taking Guider on is, at your organization, how would I find a mentor? And it's a really telling question, because the answers range from, oh, I have no idea, you'd have to go and figure it out yourself, to, oh, you'd speak to your line manager, who'd speak to their line manager, and it would get sort of trickled down. And both of those answers lead to really poor outcomes for the learner, which lead to really poor outcomes for the organization. And Guider's matching algorithm is infinitely configurable. So any piece of data that we capture on registration or profile creation can be used to influence the match between a mentor and a mentee. But to make it easier, we've built these 10 different matching templates, everything from the most basic, as Tom referred to, like skills-based and goal-oriented, right the way through to role aspiration, performance recovery, cross-functional, pastoral, just about employee well-being, and everything in between. And often customers will take one of these as a starting point and will tweak it and configure it accordingly. But the big thing to take away is that matching on Guider is scientific, so it's not bias-driven, and it basically stops one of the big problems we found, which was either people couldn't find a mentor, they only chose a mentor who looked like them, or everyone tried to go and find a mentor who was the most senior person in the business, which isn't necessarily the right mentor for them. So we eradicate a lot of that bias with our matching algorithm, which we've done a lot of work on building to where it is today. One of the key areas that the data we collect can really be leveraged, and we collect thousands of different data points across every mentoring relationship, is looking at a kind of skills gap. So we give L&D teams a live snapshot of what are the top skills sought by mentees and what are the top skills offered by mentors. And then we can start to interrogate, well, why are those lists different? Why are more mentees asking for skills that mentors can't deliver? And often that is a sign, for example, of an aging workforce. When you've got younger employees coming in asking for skills that the older workforce just can't deliver. And it allows us to design other multi-dimensional learning interventions across content, training, and other areas of work that can really address these. Tom and I have been in a lot of demos recently, and he'll be sick of me saying these are my favorite graphs on the admin dashboard, because I think they're so giving and they have so much insight to share for L&D teams. Value realization, I won't spend too long on this because I want to get to talking to Alex a bit more about the ECF program and some of the results that they've seen. But we're very open with our customers and potential customers about how long it takes to achieve widespread organizational change through all different sorts of learning programs, but mentoring specifically. And we tend to tier things, thinking about engagement first. So within the first 3 months, we can tell whether a program is being successful by looking at the leading indicators, such as how many registrations have you got, how many relationships are being created, how many initial sessions are being held. We then start to look at knowledge growth in that first 6-month period, which is all around, are people starting to report modest skill development? Are they starting to actually say, oh, I am actually improving my public speaking because I've been meeting with Alex monthly and she's been helping me develop that, for example. Then we look at behavioral change. This is more like, are individuals hitting their goals? And is that having an impact in their quarterly performance reviews, the way that they're rated by other colleagues, and 360-degree feedback? And all of this drives that top of the pyramid there, which is an organization's individualized top-line metrics. So as Tom said, this could be staff retention, it could be staff well-being, it could be internal mobility is a big one. Let's increase internal mobility, reduce turnover, and move people into other roles. So when you come to work with us at Guider, we'll sit with you and build a value realization roadmap across those milestones to think about how will we know at each part of your program journey that the program is being impactful and successful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Mike. Like that North Star piece is fundamental, and we've had countless conversations with customers that are thinking about running a 6-month pilot and having to kind of temper expectations, I think, as to like, what are you going to achieve in that time? It isn't going to be a fundamental shift in some sort of organizational outcome, but we can work on towards that road of how do we get there. I think is just helping reframe that journey and the kind of the opportunities that we can support them with as well.
Yeah, for sure. Tom, why don't you talk about some of the things that makes Guider different?
Yeah, absolutely, love to. So look, we've touched on a few of these, well, a couple of these, in terms of the kind of matching algorithm and how that is set up, and the opportunities that we have. Again, Mike, I know you've on a few calls you've spoken about like behavioural styles being a matching criteria. There's an opportunity to go above and beyond just arbitrary data points of I want to develop the skill and you can teach me that. But there is a lot more nuance to successful relationships. And so anything we can capture is really exciting in terms of helping inform that. The other aspects would be, when we start to think about, kind of buzzwords, but in the flow of work, right? We recognize that introducing another system into what is already probably quite a complex technology stack may not be great for engagement. And so we're very proud and excited by our MS Teams integration that allows everything that is within the Guider system to be accessed directly in your MS Teams instance as well, but also then taking that a step further. So I'm going to jump into the right here in terms of that kind of AI facilitation. So we're not adverse to AI. We are human first and AI enabled is the way I would describe it. But, again, having those resources to help maximize the effectiveness of those conversations. So I have a mentoring session with Mike later today. Give me some ideas for a session plan or some questions to ask, again, to make that effective. Again, recognizing that I might be in a relationship, at my first mentoring relationship, and I don't know how I'm going to get the most out of it. So again, how do we leverage that technology to support that? And then the final aspect, and this is, I think, quite true of Thrive as well as Guider, and was probably one of those really exciting opportunities when the acquisition came about, was when we start to think about that kind of full wraparound service. So Guider is a technology solution. It's a SaaS product fundamentally. But I think where we set ourselves apart is where we start to think about the ongoing partnership and how do we support our customers in terms of driving effective mentoring programs. It isn't a one and done. We don't set up the program and then go, okay, we'll speak to you in 12 months and see how it's gone. it is a constant kind of iteration and review of what's working, what's effective, what isn't, and how do we need to make those tweaks to drive engagement and kind of optimize everything that we're doing. So that this is kind of what I've captured from 6 weeks of being here. I'm sure we'll find some more standouts, but yeah, I think these are the kind of fundamentals.
Amazing. Well, look, now we can get to the meat of things, I guess, and talk to Alex in a bit more detail about what's been going on at the Early Careers Foundation and how things have been going. Alex, you already kindly gave an overview of the program, so let's jump straight in with some questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I'd say to anyone streaming and watching, please do pop your questions for Alex, for me, or for Tom in the chat, and I'm sure we'll be happy to address those as well. I mean, Alex, you alluded a bit to some of the challenges you were facing with manual matching, but can you describe in a bit more roundedness, if that's a word, the kind of challenges you were facing when you joined Guider?
Yeah, so certainly matching was one. We had a much smaller kind of cohort of participants on our programs at the time, so it was manageable, but it was very time consuming. We were also making kind of judgments ourselves on who we thought would be best matched. Wasn't kind of led by the mentees themselves, and it certainly wasn't led by the kind of data that we can capture through Guider. So although we felt as though it was a tailored, unique partnership that we were creating, it was very much through our team's eyes, and like I said before, it kind of impossible to scale. The other thing I kind of mentioned briefly before is because our program is for 16 to 18-year-olds, there's safeguarding concerns. And as part of our kind of program structure, all of our sessions are recorded and stored for any safeguarding disclosures or concerns that may come down the line. And prior to using Guider, that was something that we recorded and stored ourselves. So it was incredibly time consuming and kind of admin heavy processes for the team. And also user kind of experience. The previous platforms or iterations that we kind of tried were quite janky for users, particularly when participants on our program are joining from over 130 different organizations from over 60 different schools across the country. They're really quite sort of spread out and varied. So having a kind of seamless experience was really important. That's kind of why we looked to Guider, I suppose.
Yeah. And I guess that was my next question, was kind of what was it about Guider that made you go with us? But you've alluded to some things there other than the user experience. And I know we supported you guys with the session recordings and making sure that those were available on platform. Was there anything else that kind of stood out?
Yeah, those two are two big hitters for sure, because they've given us kind of peace of mind when it comes to the safety of our participants, but also that kind of seamless user experience means that our engagement stays really high on the program. The other thing I would say is probably the admin dashboard, and it's the insights that we've been able to get as we scale our program. We know how many sessions are happening each month. We know who's active. We know where skill gaps are across the cohort, and that data's been so helpful as we grow our program and know how to iterate and improve.
Amazing. There's a question in the chat from Ian Summerfield. I don't know if we can show that on screen or whether I'll just read it out, but it's probably for you, Tom, actually, which is, would the integration with Thrive mean that any skills development a learner has within the learning platform would be migrated into a conversation with Guider?
It's the $1 million question I think they're in, right? When we start to think about the integration. Yes, is the long and short. One of the fundamental aspects, or one of the key considerations of the integration of the two solutions, is where we start to think about how does skills data feed from Thrive into Guider, assuming we're talking about two separate platforms, but fundamentally they'll be in the same platform. But from a mentoring perspective, how does somebody's profile information, their skills data, feed into that in terms of that matching? But also a kind of bilateral integration of, okay, so I've had those mentoring relationships, how is that then feeding back into my skills profile? So probably one for a follow-up conversation, Ian, I would say, to dive into that in a bit more detail. But yes, long and short is a yes.
Yeah, I think that skills alignment is going to be super key, as you say, Tom. Alex, what sort of feedback have your mentors and mentees shared, or have you got any particular stories that jump out to you of mentors and mentees that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stories that I could dive into. I guess, first of all, sort of jumping off the matching conversation that we've had, that was a real sticking point for us, right? Especially when you're working with young people, 16 to 18-year-olds, notoriously quite a difficult group to engage and to kind of have buy-in to a program like ours. And actually 96% of our mentees in this past cohort felt that they were well matched to their mentor and that their mentor had interesting and useful insights. So it kind of really demonstrates that well-suited partnerships that we can get out of using the matching algorithms on Guider. That also has meant that we've got pairs that have got common interests in particular industries. I think of one pair from last year, Mark, who works at Lambert Smith Hampton. He's head of learning development there, actually. He was paired up with a student, Hassar, from South London, 16, interested in real estate, but no idea of what he wanted to do in the space. They were matched based on kind of common professional interests and skills that they wanted to work on together. And throughout their 2 years on our mentoring program, have developed a really fantastic relationship. Hassar is now going off to university literally this month, which is super exciting, and hopefully will be pursuing a career in the industry as well. So in no small part due to the kind of matching that enabled them to in the first place get put together, and then the relationships that they've been able to build since. They've done work experience placements together and had all sorts of kind of offshoots jump off from our mentoring program. So yeah, some really great testimonials of people that have enjoyed their matching.
Love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess final question from me, Alex, I guess, before we can wrap things up, is, in your experience, why is mentoring, or how has mentoring been powerful for the mentors, for those corporate partners? Why does LSH give their head of L&D time to go and do mentoring with the ECF, other than kind of it's a great thing to do? Like, yeah, what's your impression of that?
Yeah, it's such a big question, and I think initially lots of people think that volunteering and getting involved in a mentoring program is something that is just a nice thing to do, right? It's just a nice kind of addition to your working life. But time and time again, we're seeing that it actually results in some real concrete takeaways for volunteers. Professional development for some of our corporate partners. Participation in our mentoring program is actually a part of a professional development program, kind of formally. We have that with KPMG, who offer our program to their trainee cohorts. A really great way to sort of pick up on some managerial skills for those that haven't had that experience before. More broadly, people want to deliver on their CSR goals and their kind of broader social impact targets, and that was something that I know you mentioned previously, Mike. We definitely allow for that greater employee engagement piece, as we've kind of talked about, and a more AI-centric workforce, with more and more people working from home. You miss out on those like water cooler coffee machine chats, and that ability to learn from people is really rewarding and offers a great experience to a lot of our volunteers. And then, of course, that inspiring next generation of talent, strengthening connections to local underrepresented talent acquisition pools. There's so many reasons why businesses and organizations want to integrate mentoring formally as a kind of strategy for their people.
Alex, since you've been running these programs, since you started getting that data and those insights, have you been able to, has that made it easier to recruit and identify other volunteers if you can start to show them the value of what it brings?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of our volunteers, I mean, it's a one-year program that we run for volunteers, but most tend to stay on after that. And typically where we start with a smaller cohort of volunteers being offered a place on our program, in the sort of subsequent years, that's going more and more. Other colleagues want to get involved, I suppose. They hear about the program and kind of word of mouth does its trick, but also, of course, volunteers are displaying great skills and professional development learnings from their experience on the program and bringing that back to team. So yeah, definitely, it's a very popular program.
Amazing.
And Alex, if people want to learn more about the ECF or how they can get involved and support, is there an easy way to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can drop us an email, hello@earlycareersfoundation.org, or have a look at our website, or of course connect with myself on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat.
Amazing. Well, guys, there's a little bit more opportunity for those streaming. There's lots of you in the call who haven't asked questions yet, so if you do have questions, please drop them in. But we obviously are big on mentoring. You can get that at Guider. We really believe how powerful it is, and we wanted to put a special offer out for you guys as a bit of a thank you for coming to today and giving us some of your time this afternoon. And with that in mind, I've opened up my diary for the next couple of weeks to allow anyone on this session today to book in a free 30-minute mentoring program consultation. So this is a non-sales pitch, open conversation where I can help you understand, like, how is mentoring currently working in your organization? What are the quick wins there? How can you overcome any of those bottlenecks in your current workflow? How can we optimize that? And I'll also share a free resource with you, which is a 5-step plan for driving engagement in mentoring, even if you're not using a piece of software like Guider. So if you scan the QR code on the screen here, you'll be able to book in that free consultation. It goes straight into my diary. We've got lots of people on the call today. So I think I've opened up about 15 or 20 slots. So please do jump in and book while they're still available. And I'd love to see as many of you as possible in those slots. If you do try and book and they've all run out, drop me a LinkedIn message or an email, and I'm sure I can open some more up. But in the meantime, just want to say thank you so much for everyone who gave up their afternoon to listen to us talk about mentoring, but not as we know it, and talk about some of those challenges that we know organizations face. A huge thank you to Alex from the Early Careers Foundation for giving up her time this afternoon to talk about her experience. And obviously thanks to Tom as well from the miserable Midlands, as he described them earlier, although it has just started to storm here outside my window in southeast London. So I feel I was very smug when I was talking about the sun outside my window earlier, and now it's absolutely tipping it down.
Karma for you, Mike.
I know, karma. This was very British to begin and end a webinar talking about the weather. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. And please do book in that free mentoring consultation when you get a chance.